have you been? I've beamed and beamed.
Sorry, miss. I was giving myself an oil job.
What if I told you that one of the most imposing and powerful robots in cinema history was played by a man so physically weak he couldn't even lift the leading lady? What if I told you that the soundtrack that defined the sound of outer space was created by two experimental composers whom the Musicians' Union refused to recognize? And what if I told you that this science fiction classic was banned in one country, not for its monsters or ideas, but for its miniskirts? Get ready to look beyond the silver saucer, because today we are revealing the 14 weirdest and most shocking secrets behind the 1956 science fiction masterpiece, Forbidden Planet. From censorship battles and drunken actors to innovations that no one believed could work. This is the untold story of the chaotic, brilliant, and often dangerous production that changed the rules of science fiction forever. Let's begin our countdown. The story of Forbidden Planet feels original and strange, but its roots are buried in the most classic soil imaginable: William Shakespeare. The screenwriters drew direct inspiration from The Tempest, the story of a powerful man, Prospero, living in isolation on an island with his innocent daughter, Miranda, controlling a subservient spirit, Ariel, and battling a monstrous creature, Caliban. Sound familiar? Dr. Morbius is Prospero, his daughter Altara is Miranda. Robbie the Robot is the helpful Ariel, and the terrifying monster from the id is the story's Caliban, a creature born from the man's own subconscious. The original script, titled Fatal Planet, was a simpler monster story, but screenwriter Cyril Hume deepened the Shakespearean roots, transforming a simple space thriller into a timeless warning about the monsters we carry inside ourselves. And Forbidden Planet wasn't always called that. The original title of the screenplay was Fatal Planet. It sounded grim, almost like a warning to the audience. MGM executives feared such a negative title would scare away moviegoers, so they changed a single word, and everything shifted. Forbidden promised danger, mystery, and a seductive allure. It was a title designed to spark curiosity. In an era crowded with B-movies titled It Came from Outer Space, Forbidden Planet stood out as something more sophisticated and intriguing. The new name gave the film an edge of mystery that worked perfectly at the box office. Altair 4 were incredibly impressive for audiences in 1956, but here's the secret. The Forbidden Planet was built on the ruins of the Yellow Brick Road. The sets were constructed on the same gigantic MGM sound stages that had previously been used for The Wizard of Oz. The ambitious production designer, Cedric Gibbons, let the budget quietly spiral out of control, knowing the results would be worth it. By the time the studio executives noticed, it was too late to stop him. The gamble worked. Forbidden Planet became one of the first films set entirely on another planet, and its visual look, from the sleek starships to the sprawling alien vistas, set the standard for the next generation of science fiction. Dr. Morbius's electronics lab wasn't just a set. It was an engineering monster in its own right. To bring its futuristic look to life, the MGM crew used over 50,000 feet of wiring, 2,500 feet of neon tubing, and 1,200 square yards of plexiglass. A team of 15 electricians worked at a single giant control panel with 110 separate switches, manually triggering every light flicker and energy pulse you see on screen. For audiences in 1956, who were used to painted backgrounds, this functional, vibrant set was a visual statement that science fiction had grown up. Of all the controversies the film could have generated, the strangest one came from Spain. The movie wasn't banned for its violence, its politics, or its strange electronic sounds. No, it was banned because actress Anne Francis wore miniskirts. Her futuristic dresses, which exposed her knees, were deemed too scandalous for the strict standards of Spain's Franco-era censors. The movie was pulled entirely and could not be shown for 11 years, until 1967. By then, the miniskirt had become an international fashion symbol, and what once caused outrage looked tame. When audiences today think of Leslie Nielsen, they picture a deadpan comedy genius from films like Airplane and The Naked Gun. But long before that, Nielsen was Hollywood's idea of a serious, handsome leading man. In Forbidden Planet, at only 29 years old, he played Commander John J. Adams, the brave, no-nonsense leader of the expedition. Watching him in the film today is almost surreal. Fans who grew up laughing at his comedy see him here as a stone-faced space hero. It's proof that even Hollywood's funniest stars sometimes start their careers being deadly serious. If the monster from the id terrified audiences visually, the score got inside their heads. Forbidden Planet was the first major film in history to feature an entirely electronic soundtrack. Composers Bebe and Louis Barron created strange, pulsing, sliding tones that felt truly alien. But the musicians' union of the era hated their work. They refused to recognize the Barrons' creations as music, arguing that they weren't made by traditional musicians. This forced MGM to credit the groundbreaking score as electronic tonalities. The Barrons didn't care. They had made history, and their experimental sounds would influence everything from 2001, A Space Odyssey, to modern synth scores. The sci-fi monsters of the 1950s usually meant men in rubber suits and cheap scares. But Forbidden Planet gave audiences something entirely new and terrifying: the monster from the id, a creature born from the subconscious of Dr. Morbius. Instead of building another rubber suit, MGM hired Disney animator Joshua Meador to bring the monster to life through hand-drawn animation. The glowing, spectral beast was unlike anything moviegoers had seen. It was terrifying on a psychological level, the literal manifestation of a man's inner demons. The creature was so effective that some theaters even cut the monster scenes, worried they would traumatize children. Robby the Robot may have looked like a perfect machine on screen, but inside was a very human stuntman named Frankie Darrow. The suit was heavy, uncomfortable, and incredibly expensive, costing MGM over $100,000 to build. But Darrow had a problem. He enjoyed his martinis. During one lunch break, he overindulged, climbed back into the massive suit, and tried to perform. The result was a comical disaster. Robbie wobbled, stumbled, and eventually toppled over, nearly wrecking one of the most expensive props in Hollywood history. Darrow was fired quickly, but the story lived on as a legend on the set. Robbie wasn't just a prop. He was a star. His futuristic design, partly inspired by the washing machines his designer, Robert Kinoshita, had previously worked on, captured the public's imagination. After Forbidden Planet, Robbie embarked on a career of his own, appearing in dozens of films and TV shows, from The Twilight Zone and Lost in Space to Gremlins and The Big Bang Theory. He became a cultural inside joke, the most famous robot in cinema history. In 2017, the original prop sold at auction for a staggering $5.3 million, making it the most expensive movie prop ever sold. The 1950s were a dark time in Hollywood due to the political witch hunts of McCarthyism. The role of the wise, Einstein-like figure Professor Barnhart was given to the talented actor Sam Jaffe. However, Jaffe was accused of having communist sympathies, and his name was about to appear on the infamous Hollywood blacklist. The studio, terrified of controversy, nearly removed him from the film. It was only due to a passionate defense from the producer that Jaffe was allowed to stay. It was a quiet act of bravery in a paranoid time, but this would be Sam Jaffe's last Hollywood film for nearly a decade. Before Tom Holtz immortalized Mozart, the role in Amadeus seemed destined for Mark Hamill. Similarly, in Forbidden Planet, the studio considered big stars for the role of Klaatu, but the filmmakers made a brilliant choice. They cast an unknown, They felt a famous face would prevent the audience from believing they were watching a visitor from another world. The role went to British actor Michael Rennie, who was relatively unknown in the US. His dignified and unfamiliar presence was perfect, making Klaatu feel truly alien. It's a casting lesson that proved that sometimes an unknown is more powerful than a superstar. The silent and indestructible robot is the film's most iconic figure. But behind the imposing exterior, the reality was much less powerful. The actor inside the suit, Lock Martin, was hired for his height alone, but he was physically weak. He was incapable of lifting the other actors as the script required. The crew had to use a combination of hidden wires, lightweight dummies, and clever camera angles to create the illusion of strength. In the scene where Gort carries Klaatu into the ship, actor Michael Rennie was actually sitting on a dolly being pushed by the crew, just out of frame. The physical strain on Martin was immense. In one take, his muscles began to spasm, and you can see the involuntary twitching of his arms in the final cut of the film. And at number 1, the secret that changes everything. We watch the film and see Klaatu as the master and Gort as his robotic servant. But in the original 1940 short story the film is based on, Farewell to the Master, the most shocking twist is that the robot, Gnut, was the true master. Klaatu was just a biological assistant, a disposable clone created by a race of intelligent machines. The movie reversed this dynamic to make the story more relatable. But the original concept presents an astonishing and, in 2025, more relevant idea than ever. That the true superior intelligence in the universe might not be biological at all. The greatest secret of the film is that the robot wasn't just the bodyguard. In the original draft of reality, he was the god from the machine. From a physically weak robot to a politically charged set, the story behind the day the Earth stood still is as compelling as the film itself. It's a testament to the power of a great idea, brave filmmaking in a time of fear, and a profound message of peace that resonates even more strongly today. It proved that sci-fi could be smart, stylish, and thought-provoking. And perhaps that's why every remake attempt has failed. The original already nailed it. Nearly 70 years later, it's not just a film. It's a reminder that when sci-fi dares to dream bigger, it can change cinema forever.